All right, cool. Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this information session about the Boost Fund. We are super excited about this grant program. It is a brand new program of Assembly for the Arts. It's very different, and so we're happy to tell you about it tonight. A couple of housekeeping things. Please keep yourself muted. I did just include a setting so you can't unmute yourself, but if please stay muted. That's the bottom line. We don't want folks jumping in. The other thing is, I believe this is being recorded. So this is going to be posted to the Boost Fund webpage when we're all done. So but if you missed something, it will be available there. All right, so what are we going to go through tonight? So the Boost Fund itself, what is it? Just a quick overview of the program. Where did it come from? Who's eligible to apply? How you can apply for the program and some of the actual application components themselves. The selection process, which is one of the most unique features of this grant program. So I'm going to go over that in some detail. So things to know if you do get a grant and some of your responsibilities as a grantee. And then we will have a Q&A session. We'll leave plenty of time for that. And then time permitting, we have a little mini workshop planned at the end. So we're going to go through some steps on a specific website for building an artist profile page, which is something that you can use in your application. So hello, everyone, and good evening. I'm Meg Matko. I'm Director of Artist Funding Programs at Assembly for the Arts. I'm also a visual artist, an arts advocate, and a longtime supporter of artists in general. And I am joined here tonight by my colleague, Deidre. Oh, you are muted.
Just saying hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much, Deidre. And actually, Deidre, are you okay if I hand it over to you to just give a brief overview of Assembly for the Arts for those folks who are not familiar with the organization?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure thing. Assembly for the Arts, this is a very long, this message, it's around our mission, which is to convene, coordinate, and collaborate with everyone in Greater Cleveland to strengthen and support those in the region who, like yourselves, create, present, experience, and appreciate all forms of arts and culture. And so that's a longer way of saying that we're here to help Greater Cleveland be a great region of the arts and a great region of equity. And it's a vast ecosystem of talent and resources, and we're here to help facilitate that as best we can. So that's Assembly for the Arts. And yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much, Deidre. I appreciate it. So our website there is at the bottom. And so we're going to just jump right into it. So what is the Boost Fund? You've probably heard this popping up on social media or in the media in general. So it is a grant program for individual artists. So the whole sort of crux of this program is that we want to support your creative practice with a boost of funding. And we're calling it a boost of funding because it is a $1,500 grant. So it's not a huge amount of funding, but it's a great amount of funding to fill gaps. If you are starting a project, you've got something going on, and you need something specific to continue that project, the Boost Fund is wonderful for that. It's also for artist-specific needs. So things like travel funds, instrument repairs, supplies and materials. We'll go over specifics a little bit later. But this is just a direct response to individual artists' comments and needs that we've heard for quite a few years. So program specs, the program was going to fund 140 artists in 2025, which is a substantial number as compared to what we've been able to fund in the past. We will have 3 cycles of this program this year. So 40 to 50 artists will be funded in every cycle. And the random selection is, as I mentioned, one of the most unique parts of the Boost Fund. So what that means is, and I will go into more detail about this a little bit later, but all artist funding decisions will be made through a random selection process. So there will not be a panel reviewing applications for content. All all artists' funding will be selected randomly. So at the bottom of your screen there is the landing page on the Assembly site for the Boost Fund. So that's assemblycle.org/boost. And just a little bit of context about how we got here. So where did this program come from? Like I mentioned, this is a brand new program. Assembly has been administering funds for artists for the last few years, but this really came out of a need, a direct need that we heard from artists was that, we need something that's accessible. We don't, some artists are maybe intimidated by applying for these really large, like merit-based grants. So we really listened to our artist community. We listened to our artist advisory committee, who we worked with to develop this program. And we listened to what was going on across the country. So there are a number of folks that are trying out this random selection method through different grant programs, and they have had a lot of success. So we'll talk more about why. But some of our goals for the Support for Artists program, so meaning the Boost Fund and the Creative Impact Fund that we're going to be launching a little later this year, are over there to your right. So listening to artists, we wanted to fund more artists through these programs, which we're going to be able to provide flexible funds, being fair and transparent, all of those good things. So I think we're really able to accomplish that through this program. So before we jump into content, I just want to reiterate that everything about the Boost Fund is on the Boost Fund webpage. So if you missed something today, don't catch it, don't remember it, please visit this page. You're going to find your application here, the guidelines for the program, which is essentially your program Bible, frequently asked questions, information session dates, recordings, all of that stuff. It is here. So, all right, going through some of these things I mentioned in a little bit more detail. So the 3 cycles in 2025, we're going to have a spring, summer, and fall cycle. So we're actually in the first open application period right now, and that ends on April 7th. So people are actively submitting applications to this program right now, which is exciting. We'll have July 16th to August 18th and October 22nd to 20th. So you'll see that the applications are open for roughly 4 weeks, which doesn't seem like a ton of time to submit, but we did that intentionally because there are multiple opportunities to submit, and the application itself is very streamlined and simple, which you'll see. Those last 2 pieces, 40 to 50 artists will be funded. So that's a set number of artists. And then our $1,500 grants, like I mentioned earlier, it is a set number. You're not applying for various amounts. There's no, subjectivity around grant amounts. It's going to be $1,500. Okay, so one of the most common questions we get about any of our grant programs is who is eligible to apply? Can I apply for this program? So who is eligible? And the short answer to that is artists. So artists are eligible to apply. That means not nonprofits, not businesses. And so how does Assembly for the Arts define artists? We define them in a pretty specific and broad at the same time. So independent professionals who derive income from creating, performing, teaching, supporting in the development of work in a number of specific creative disciplines. So this is going to be an overload for the eyes. This next slide here, don't feel like you need to remember all of this. The main things you need to remember are that this list of craft, dance, design, film, interdisciplinary works, literary arts, media, music, theater and performance, traditional arts, and visual arts. That's kind of that's the short answer for disciplines that are eligible to apply for this program. So like I said, this is specific and broad at the same time. One of the questions we sometimes get, there are other industry groups that are maybe adjacent to the arts. We get questions from people, I'm a chef, can I apply? I'm a barber, can I apply? I'm a hairstylist. And we do have a restriction around that this year. So we aren't, those industry groups are not eligible to apply for the Boost Fund. It's really targeted to this sort of like very art and cultural producer specific definition. All right, so there's a little bit more eligibility specifics around artists. So you have to be 18 or older. That's pretty standard in a lot of grant programs. We don't have a restriction around students. So if you are a student, you can apply. How you just have to be 18 years or older. Residents of Cuyahoga County. So this is a really important piece of eligibility. You have to live in the county to apply for these funds. That means you have to live in the county. That means you have to live in a building in the county. We get so many questions about folks. Well, I have a studio in Cuyahoga, but I live in Summit County. Can I apply? The answer is no. Well, I work in Cuyahoga. Can I apply? No, you have to live here. And the way we defined residency is the place that you inhabit more than 6 months out of the year. So if you live in your studio more than 6 months out of the year, then that's fine. But that is how we're defining it. And it's very specific because these are public funds coming from the county. Everyone must be a practicing creative, which we'll go through in a little bit more detail. Another specific here is that an artist have not received a support for artist grant in the 2023 or 2024 grant year. So if you received a grant from any of these programs, that just popped up on your screen here in 2023 or 2024. Unfortunately, you are not eligible to apply for the Boost Fund in 25. We know that's not going to be favorable. Some folks are not going to love that. But we are intentional in that we are trying to spread the love. We are really trying to get more artists who have not been touched by these funds to be part of this. So believe it or not, we had a couple of artists who were funded through multiple programs last year in this sort of set of programs. So we're really, really trying to get it out there and really actually get to people who are not familiar with the grant process at all. That's a big goal of the program. So there are 3 cycles. How many applications can I submit? The answer is 1 per artist per cycle until funded. So you can submit an application. I'm John Smith and I submit my 1 application for cycle 1. You cannot submit any more for cycle 1. Now, John Smith gets funded in cycle 1. He gets Boost Fund. He is no longer eligible to submit applications in cycle 2 or cycle 3. If he doesn't get funded, he can continue to submit to all cycles of the program until he does get funded. Can you get a Boost Fund and a Creative Impact Fund in 2025? The answer is yes, you can. So if you are applying for the Creative Impact Fund in 25 and the Boost Fund and you happen to get both, you can receive both of those. So I want to make just make sure that's clear in that, Creative Impact Fund grantees from 2024 cannot apply for and receive a Boost Fund in 2025. So hopefully that's clear enough. Right. How do I apply? Excuse me. The website. So the Boost Fund does not offer a paper application. All of the applications are going to be done online and accessed through this webpage and submitted through a third-party platform called Submittable. So when you log on or you've gotten to the Assembly website, here you are, you're on the Boost Fund page, you're going to hit this big Apply Today button. And that is going to take you to this login page. Now, if you have a Submittable account already, you will just go ahead and log into your account to continue on with the application. If you do not have a Submittable account, you're going to go ahead and sign up there underneath that big blue or green continue button and create your free account. So once you've created the account, you want to make sure to log in, visit this page again, and then click your apply button to access the application itself. So what is in the application exactly? The first thing is you're going to see when you log in and get in there is the set of eligibility questions over here to your right. There's going to be contact information, which is very standard, your address, your neighborhood, a couple questions about your creative practice. One area where you can include a link to a web page that showcases your work as an artist. a couple questions about your expenses with the Boost Fund, and some optional demographic questions. So this is over here on the right is exactly what the application itself looks like. So if you're seeing this, you're good, you're in the right place. Now, one thing about these eligibility questions is that they are designed to actually filter out people who are not eligible. So be very careful about how you answer these, because if you answer one and your answer to that question deems you ineligible, it will boot you out and you won't be able to enter the application again. So if you do that and you think it was a complete mistake or an error, please get a hold of us and we can remedy it. But by and large, if you've gotten the ineligible message, that means that you are ineligible based on your answers here. Okay, so like I mentioned, creative practice questions. Again, over on the right, this is exactly what the application itself looks like. So this is really an opportunity for you to showcase yourself and your work. This is much less extensive than a typical artist grant application. So you're going to select your creative discipline there at the top in a dropdown. You can only select one. We know a lot of artists work in multiple disciplines, but we encourage you to pick the one that best matches, your skills or your primary discipline. Or if you work in a lot of different things and you just want to talk about one aspect of it, just select that discipline. And then this single essay question here below, it is a max of 200 words, so this is not a novel. This is really just a chance for you to talk about yourself as an artist, your creative practice, what you make, what your mediums are, styles, genres, how long have you been creating, things like that. What drives you to make art? Those things that just give a nice illustration of you as an artist. And then, like I mentioned, there's this digital media link where it says, share a link to the webpage that best showcases your creative work. So I will talk a little bit more about that later, but that can be things like your website, your social media page, a Linktree page, if you have that, or an artist profile page. There's a list of things that are possible in the Boost Fund FAQ found on the homepage. So we encourage you to take a look at that. But yes, this should be something that really showcases your work. Like you shouldn't be putting up, a Facebook page that has just pictures of you and your dog. Like this really needs to be something that really tells us who you are as an artist. And then there's a couple multiple choice, or I'm sorry, single answer questions below about whether you've applied for a grant or received a grant in the past. So like I mentioned, I don't have a link to a website. What can I link to? So artists' social media. So that would be things like Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, art-specific sites, things like Vimeo if you're a filmmaker, or Patreon, Bandcamp, and then artist profile pages. These can be, there are a number of artist registry pages across the country. A lot of people have artist registries, but there is one in Cleveland on the Cleveland Arts and Events site. You can create a free account and create an artist profile page, and then you can use that profile as your link in your application. So don't include stuff that is like has a paywall. So don't include links to, Netflix or Spotify or things like that. And we know artists are putting work out there, but those are hidden. You have to log in to see that. You have to pay to use those sites. So please don't include things like that. It's a dead end. So all right, the next section of the application is expenses. So how will you spend your boost funds? As you see here, so there's what activities or materials will you pay for with your boost funds? You're going to just select as many of those as apply. The reason that we're asking for these things is that it keeps us and you accountable. So if you do get funded, we can look back at your application and say, okay, here's the things that you outlined. You said you wanted to spend your grant on. We're going to kind of keep that in mind. We're going to keep that in our back pocket. But these are not used in funding decisions. So if you don't have, everything and every detail ironed out, this is not going to affect whether or not you get a grant. There is a table actually that pops up below. It looks just like this. And that's where we're going to ask you to put some estimated costs for some of the things that you chose in that previous section. So again, these can be estimates. They can be, approximate things. We don't need you to have a, itemized report from everything. So just a sense, just a sense. It's a good practice as an artist to get a sense of how you might spend a grant, regardless of the size. Okay, and so that leads to the next question, which is what can you actually spend this grant money on? So like I mentioned in the beginning, so it's artist-led projects and events or programs or artist-related needs. So artist-led projects, events, or programs. So this can be things like festivals, fairs, workshops. If you're creating something, you're running something, you're in something, you need funds. I need a booth fee, things like that. I'm creating a workshop and I need some supplies for my workshop. It's stuff like that. Venue costs, permits and licenses. We know there's definitely permits and things that are required to have public events, artist contract fees. One of the stipulations with the artist-led projects, events, or programs is that they must be public facing and they must be in Cuyahoga County. So when we say public facing, these can't be things like fundraisers or private galas or things that, are exclusive. We want them to be like community events, things that everybody can access. So that's, I think, the long and short of that. And then artist related needs. This is a really great one for artists because there are not a lot of grants that you can access that will cover things like work related travel. So if you are trying to get to, say, a professional development opportunity as an artist, or you have an exhibition out of town and you need to get there, you can use these funds for travel within the United States. It can't be international, unfortunately. That is a restriction, but within the US. You can also use this for your studio rent or any kind of maintenance. Like I said, if you have a piece of equipment that's broken and you need it repaired, you can use it for that. Materials, technology, lots of things. The details are in the guidelines. And if you have a question about whether or not you can spend the funds on a specific thing, please let us know and we'll let you know. Okay. So now, excuse me, I'm going to get into this selection process a little bit. Like I mentioned, all recipients will be chosen through a random selection process. So what does that mean? That means no funding decisions will be made by a jury or assembly staff. What's common in artist grant programs is there is a panel of other artists, usually from, whether they're local or outside the region, who review every application for content and merit. Applications will not be evaluated based on content, except for eligibility. So there is a part of the process where we are going to look at those submissions that receive funding to make sure that they are in fact eligible, that their the addresses match and they are actually working artists based on the content they provided. However, this is not a program where there's going to be a selection criteria or a point system or any of those things evaluating your work on its quality or execution. And we will use some tools to do this selection for us. So we're going to use a randomized selection. It's just called a randomizer. You enter a list of numbers and it literally selects a random list of numbers for you out of that. So this will be anonymous. Assembly will not have any hand in manipulating the list of recipients afterwards. It is all going to be done randomly. And why are we doing this? I know it seems weird. And I think when we first put this out there to folks, they're kind of like, I don't know that I like this very much. But we're very intentional about why we are doing it. So because the random selection places the emphasis on a broad support of creatives rather than artistic merit and reduces competition and subjectivity from the grant process. We hear from artists all the time that they are tired of competing against one another, that it's very difficult to put your art out there in a way that makes you feel vulnerable and rejected, for lack of a better term. This sort of method really is using this philosophy that presupposes the idea that all artists are worthy of funding, regardless of what their art is, what it looks like, or some imaginary sort of merit system that we've placed on it. So that's the philosophy behind it. And we're happy to answer questions about that if anyone has them. And so now we're going to move ahead to you actually got a grant. Hooray. What do I need to know? So there are a few grantee requirements. So we are going to ask grantees to submit a brief final report at the end of the year. Typically, reporting is required anytime you get a grant. We're going to make this very, very easy on grantees in that we're going to ask for a 2 to 3 minute video testimonial about your experience with the Boost Fund and how it's helped your creative practice. So there's not going to be, a submission of all kinds of financial documentation and tax information or big long written answers. It's going to be pretty simple. Something to know if you do get a grant is that these funds are taxable. And we encourage you, oh my gosh, I realized there was these little things here. We encourage you to consult a professional on that. Assembly really can't answer any questions about how you should reserve taxes out of your grant funds through the year. So we want to leave that up to the professionals. We do have some resources for that if folks are interested in talking to accounting professionals. And then expenses. So we do ask that artists keep all of their receipts and how they, sort of track how they spend the funds. We do want to make sure that we are staying accountable, you're staying accountable. Again, these are public dollars that we have to, make sure that we're being good stewards of throughout the year. So, and I just want to share that we're here to help. I'm putting this website up here again. Our email address that is specific for our grant program. So grants@assemblycle.org. You can email that. I will say that Deidre and I are going to get pretty overwhelmed and swamped with inquiries. So you're probably better off sending a message to the grants box. We check that regularly and it kind of helps us keep organized the inquiries. We're getting a lot of inquiries. And if we don't get back to you right away, please don't be upset. We're doing our best. So, all right. That's the end of this session. And I got through that pretty quickly tonight, but I want to open it up if there are any questions in the chat.
No, so far no questions in the chat, but feel
All
free
right.
to unmute yourself and chime in.
Yeah, it looks like we have a
Or you can
reasonable.
use the chat, yeah, whichever you
Yeah.
prefer. One question comes from Mike. How many applications do we expect?
That's an interesting question. We have no way of knowing. There's a lot of variables that affect how many applications you get. One of them is, your outreach strategy. How many people are actually finding out about the program? And I think Assembly is really intentional about trying to get the word out there. I can share that we had an extremely high response for our Creative Impact Fund last year. That was different in that it was a single application cycle, and we received 413 applications for that program. Like again, it's a much different program, larger grant size, completely different. However, we were very intentional about getting the word out there. A lot of people found out about it and applied. So we could see anywhere from 100 per cycle to 90 per cycle. It's very difficult to tell.
We're hoping to get around 100 this first cycle, but as you can imagine, by cycle 3, awareness will be much more. Hint, hint. So that's just something to keep in mind. But we are very intentional about our outreach strategy because this is for artists, eligible artists who, whether they live anywhere in the Cuyahoga County, they are eligible. So pretty broad outreach.
Yeah.
Okay, our next question is from Ron. And he asks, as an author working out of my home, I have very little expense. What I need is time. Do authors ever use CAC grants? And if so, how do they use the funds?
That's an excellent question. Um, so yes, they do use grants from Assembly for time. And I would say that a better grant potentially to apply for to use for that type of expense would be the Creative Impact Fund. Those are unrestricted grants, and can be used to really support you and your creative practice in a in a little bit broader way than a boost fund can. These are really specific to sort of projects and needs, um, more tangible things. So I would say yes, absolutely. Artists do apply for assembly grants and use them in that way. It just depends on the type of grant, whether it is, project based on a sort of specific outcome or an unrestricted type of fund.
Um, I'll just add that writers are definitely eligible, and
Absolutely.
um, we had several writers win be awarded the Creative Impact Fund.
Mhm.
But there's probably a number of things that you can apply, and all that detail is in the guidelines. So,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, our next question is okay from Dan. I do have a business. I'm self-employed, Dan Morgan, DBA straight shooter. Okay. Oh, okay. Did you have a question related to that, Dan? Oh, you'll
Oh,
need to hit the space button. You can temporarily unmute yourself.
at work. You know what? I think it's because I locked it. Hang on one
Settings, that's
second,
right.
Dan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I saw one part of it said that if you're a business, you're not eligible. And I've been a self-employed business for 40 years. So just wondering if that makes me a business ineligible.
Yeah,
Just
it's
me.
so yeah, it is that is tricky. Because oftentimes artists are one person businesses. So, what we say is that if you are part of a business or you are part of a nonprofit organization, you are still eligible to apply for the funds. There's some maneuvering to be done, I think, if you plan to use them as business expenses. It is hard to separate the individual from the business. So we could talk offline about, the specifics around that, but being part of a business or being part of a nonprofit doesn't necessarily preclude you from applying for the program. It's just about how you report on and use the funds, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And, my photography business is a commercial business,
Right.
but I have another side of me that promotes myself as a fine artist.
There you
And
go.
there's no money in that. So
There you go. So yes. So it is, like I said, it's sort of a reporting and expense question. And less of a, an eligibility question. Now, if you are someone who is running a nonprofit organization and you're saying, I'm applying on behalf of my nonprofit organization and I want to use these funds to support my nonprofit, that's a completely different scenario. And that would not be an eligible case. If you run a nonprofit organization, you're also an artist and you have your own practice, then you can apply for those funds and use them for your own creative practice. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
definitely.
Okay, cool.
All right. Our next question is from Stephanie. When is the grant approval going to be announced for the first round? I have a question and need to add. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Great question. So it closes on April 7th. And then we are going to take some time to go through and conduct that actual selection process. We're looking around sometime in May that people will start receiving notifications as to whether or not they've received funding. So everybody that applied is going to get some sort of notification about your application. So you can expect those sometime in May.
And I'm sorry, I skipped a question from Mike. He asked, is this program an evolution of the Creative Workforce Fellowship?
So that's an interesting question. This is a very different type of program from the Creative Workforce Fellowship. Like I mentioned, this is a totally different model. It's a different grant size, it's a different selection process, it's a different intended use for the funds. The Creative Workforce Fellowship was funded through public dollars from Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, and this is also funded through public dollars from Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. However, they're two completely different programs. So I don't know that I would call it an evolution of that program. Maybe maybe it is as we learn more and we, build different types of support programs for artists. But as it doesn't really share any of the characteristics of that program, so to speak.
All right. Mike had another question. He was asking about Bratenahl. He mentioned it's not listed in the neighborhoods drop down. Do you have to live in one of those neighborhoods listed in the application?
Great question. You do not. You do not. Those are a list of specific neighborhoods that we are interested in seeing, how many submissions we get from those particular neighborhoods, but you do not need to live in one of those neighborhoods. You just have to live within the county. So if you don't see your neighborhood in that list, it is okay. That doesn't mean you're ineligible, for sure.
All right. Sharon asks, if you're not eligible right now, is there a community support to assist you to become eligible next year if it will be available again?
That is a good question. I think it depends. We are here, Assembly is here to support artists in any way that we can, whether it's applying for our programs or if it's applying for other types of funding through other organizations. We are here to support in that way. So if this program's not a great fit for you, we have a feeling that there probably is another one that would be. So we encourage you to just visit our website, talk with us, and see what might be a good fit for you.
And if you need a little more information, feel free to reach out to us, of course. Ron asks, is there a window of time in which the funds must be used?
Yeah, great. Excellent question. So we consider this a 12-month grant. So your funds have to be spent within 12 months from your grant, when you received it. So there's a 12-month grant period. However, we are going to probably come to you and ask be somewhere around the middle of the year for that, maybe that testimonial about how those grant funds supported your creative practice. So you just have to have everything spent within 12 months. But we'll probably be hitting you up for information earlier than that throughout the year.
All right. And Stephanie wants to verbally ask her question. Yes, feel free to unmute yourself and chime right in, Stephanie.
Oh, shoot. Let's see, I gotta find Stephanie and I'm
Just got to adjust the settings.
yeah, sorry about
hang
that.
tight, hang tight, Stephanie.
Okay, hi.
There you go.
My question is kind of like Dan Morgan's, but so I was working under a brand that I flipped into my nonprofit brand, and I started a new art brand that is kind of a new art brand. And so I'm known more for the nonprofit name. It's a little different though, but it's still what I'm known for. But the new brand is where I'm launching myself now. and I'm also a member of the Assembly of Arts, and I'm known under the other one. So, should I, in the narrative of the application, like put visionarism, formerly known as?
Yeah, you absolutely can. You can include that in your narrative if that helps clarify around your creative practice. But
Yes,
I guess a question for you is, what kind of work do you do? What kind of art do you create?
I am a fashion designer, and my work is in the Cleveland Museum of Art. I was on Project Runway. I'm legally blind. I've been to New York Fashion Week and did presentations. So I design clothes and wearable art. My
That's
nonprofit is teaching art therapy to individuals who are having a hard time in life and accepting their disability and showcasing positive awareness through art therapy.
That's fantastic. Well, and that is exactly what I would talk about in your essay question. I would talk about your fashion design, what you create as an artist. You can focus maybe less on, sort of the collectives or structures that you've built to push your art forward and focus more on your craft,
Okay.
in that essay question, because that's
Okay.
amazing and that needs to be celebrated for sure.
So, last part of the question
Yeah.
is right now I am in need of some equipment that supports my art and
Mhm.
visual impairment.
Mhm.
And so if I am deemed to receive that grant, could we turn in our submissions on on our thank yous early? That's all.
Your expenses, I
Yes,
think I'm
yes. Could we
understanding.
turn? Yes,
Oh,
could we?
absolutely. Yes. If you spend your funds before the 12 months is up and you want to share what you've spent those funds on, you can absolutely submit that early. And in fact, we would love that if you did. So yes, of course. You don't have to wait 12 months to spend it. If you spend it in a month, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right.
Um, there was Sharon, I just wanted to say, Sharon has expressed an interest in staying connected with everyone. And we know that connecting with other artists and other creatives across the region is essential. It's, we being a community with one another means a lot. So we really like to encourage that and support that. One of the ways you can definitely be in community with one another is by joining us on Wednesday, March 26th. We're going to have lunch together and have one of our quarterly gatherings called an assembly. Hey. And we're our topic, we want to we're facilitating a dialogue around advocacy. And advocacy takes on many, many forms. It's not any one thing and doesn't look one way. It's trying to create change that you want to see in our arts ecosystem. So we're getting together to talk about that and over lunch, and we'd love for you to join us. So check out assemblycle.org/events. The details are there. We also support and promote a lot of events on our social media channels and in our email newsletter. So stay connected to us. You can find out how to connect to those platforms on our website as well. And if you're having trouble connecting in those spaces or hearing about events, again, just send Meg or I an email. We're happy to point you in the direction to some cool things that people are organizing specifically for artists and creatives. We're going to be doing that too this year with some of our grantees, with all of our grantees. So stay tuned for that. But appreciate you asking about that, being a community, because we love being a community with everybody too. And then also Sharon asked to specifically connect with Stephanie around the topic of being visually impaired, shared that in the comments. So feel free to share your emails or we can connect you again after we end this Zoom. Okay, thank you. And I don't
That's
think we
fantastic. I love that people are connecting with one another. That's awesome.
All right. And that was the last question in the chat. But if anyone has anything they want to ask or say, our CEO, Jeremy Johnson, has joined.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Yeah, if we're reached the limit, people are good. I can also go through the little mini workshop here at the end, which is the Cleveland Arts and Events profile, building an artist profile on that site, so you can kind of get a sense of how to do that. If we are all set. Good. All right. Escape out of there. This. So that site that I mentioned earlier, Cleveland Arts and Events, or I'm sorry, it's just clevelandartsevents.com. A lot of artists ask, okay, well, I don't have, a link to a website. I don't have a website. My social media is just a mishmash. It doesn't have my art. I don't have some of these certain things. I love to tell people about the use of an artist profile. I think it's a really great way if you don't have access to creating a full-blown website. It's a great way to showcase your art and be able to use that as a link in other applications or in this Boost Fund application specific. So visit this website here, clevelandartsevents.com. You're going to see here, I mean, this is a great site for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to go specifically through this. So if you scroll over here to artists, you want to create an artist profile, select that. You're going to see this page. The first thing that you have to do is create a free account. So if you don't already have an account, you can register for one right here. So you'll just enter your information, first, last name. It's pretty self-explanatory. You have to create a password, and then you will have a free account to this site. So I already have one myself, so I'm going to log in and show you what it looks like. So I'm in my dashboard. And you can manage your individual artist profile, organization, or venue profile. So the nice thing about this too is that if you have events as an artist, you can also post your events on this site and they'll link directly to your artist profile page. So let's see here. Artist over here to your left. Manage artist. If you are adding a new profile, you're going to go to add new. We're going to look at the profile page and see what it looks like. So here's what your profile page can look like. You've got a header image that you can put for, any kind of art image that you have, a still. You can put your name and your medium. You can put additional images of your work over here and you can title them. You can include a bio or an artist statement about your work. There's some artist typing over here that you can include as well. And your contact information. I don't have my contact information on here, but you don't have to include that. But you can then, like I said, use this as your link to include on the Boost Fund application and other applications. Let's see what it looks like if we do an add new. So if you're creating a new profile, this is what the page is going to look like. So you enter obviously your name here. Check here if you don't want your email to appear on your artist profile. It's good to have that in case people want to get a hold of you, of course. And then your location info. It is all pretty self-explanatory. If you do have a website or you want to put any of your additional pages here, you can include those as well. Select your artist type. So you can select from any of these options or list something that isn't. An artist style. So here I picked, I think, did I pick? Visual artist or something? Yes, I picked visual artist, and then I picked sculpture, and then I think I added an additional thing here. Medium, and then this is where you can include a bio or statement. And images. So you do have to select this. Upload primary image. Your primary image is going to be that big image you saw at the top of the page. You do that by clicking this button here. Answering the copyright acknowledgement. Oops, I didn't do that. And it's going to bring you to a dialog box on your device, whatever that might be. So you can upload additional images to your profile by clicking this tab. And then a cover image. Oh wait, I may have stuff, which ones? But anyways, you can get the idea here that you can upload quite a few images. This is a nice layout. And what it looks like publicly is great. And you can include, again, this on additional applications as well as the Boost Fund. So if anybody has any questions about this, you can shout them out now, or you can send them later, or you can jump on this site and test it out yourself and set up a free profile. Totally up to you.
And Sharon asked to send this information to her. Thanks for sharing your email address. If you want to make note of the URL, it's clevelandartsevents.com. But we can follow up and share email.
Absolutely. And yeah, we always send a follow-up email after our information session, so we can include a link in that as well, so you can access that. There is just going to scooch over here really quick to the Assembly website. So I'm actively on the Boost Fund page right here, as you can see, and I believe I'm not 100% sure where it is, so I'm not going to dig. Maybe it's in here. Artist Toolbox Basics. But there is an additional tutorial video about how to set up your artist profile page on Cleveland Arts Events. So we can send a link to that as well. Right. Well,
there was one last question. Sharon asked if I guess the Cleveland Arts Events website, if that's the same as the membership, or how does it differ from the membership?
no, that's a great question. So that's a different section entirely. Now, Cleveland Arts Events is not associated with the Assembly website. This is its own website. It does its own thing. It has its own function. It's just for artists, events, and profiles and other types of opportunities. The membership page you will access on the Assembly website. So you're going to go here, assemblycle.org. And if you go over to member login, that is how you log into your membership. So you include your information here. If you are not a member yet, you can become a member at this address. So this is the page to actually sign up, purchase your membership, and get on board. But if you're already a member, you're just trying to log in, you can access that right on the Assembly website here under member login. Yeah, we had a couple of questions. We do actually have some great new benefits that have come up as part of our membership as well, which we'll be talking about at the Assembly.
Another question from Mike: is there anything we should avoid in the application? For example, too many links, too much detail and expenses?
No, not really. And it's pretty structured and pretty limited as to what you can include. So you really can only include one link. There's not an opportunity to include multiple links. Your essay question is limited to 200 words. So it's very succinct. And the remainder of the questions are check boxes. So there's really not, it's sort of foolproof in that way that you can't, miss something, add too much. Again, this program is not based on merit. It is really based on just supporting artists in a more broad way. Hopefully that helps.
Those were the final questions in the chat.
All right, I'm gonna just do this really quick and just say hi to everybody.
Just kidding, Ron. We just got another question. Do you know if funds can be used for conferences, professional development?
Absolutely. Yes, you absolutely can use them for conferences, for professional development. We mentioned travel to professional development, but if you are actually trying to attend a conference or something, take a class, be part of a workshop, you can use the funds for that for sure. Cool. Thank you for all these really good questions, everyone. And we appreciate you being here. We got through this in a really efficient amount of time. We had a longer time scheduled, but we got through this in an hour. So thank you for being a great attendees. You're being great attendees. And like I said, this will be the recording for